in the year when I was at my most vicious. I used every means to play with Kenneth, the succubus heartthrob at school. Later, I ended up on the streets while he rose to become a celebrity. I was imprisoned and retaliated against by him, becoming a tool to satisfy his desires. I thought he hated me to the core until I was kidnapped by my childhood friend. However, to save me, he had his horns cut off, his tail severed, his sharp teeth pulled out, and bled to death. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the year when he forced me to marry him, in the dark and sunless basement. He looked at me locked on the bed, his voice hoarse. "What? Do you want to slap me again?" My eyes turned red. "Kenneth, will you kiss me?" Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. At the cold and damp dock, Kenneth's limbs were locked with chains, and blood gushed out wildly from his battered body. He held on, looking up in the direction I had left, and showed a smile full of deep attachment and tenderness. I had never imagined that Kenneth was willing to endure humiliation and even risk his life to save me. He, who had always been proud, was electroshocked to reveal his succubus true form, locked in a cage, and was watched, humiliated, and tortured at will by people. At the moment when his horns were cut off and his tail was severed, he was still comforting me as I trembled. "Don't be afraid. Don't you hate them the most? Alyssa, you must live on. You said you still want to avenge your father." He tremblingly wiped the tears from my cheeks. His eyes, which had always been cold and restrained, became greedy. "Don't cry. After I'm dead, you'll be free." I broke down and roared in pain. "No, I don't want you to die." The moment Kenneth smiled and fell down, I broke free from the restraints and rushed back. In the explosion, I held Kenneth tightly in my arms. We fell in the same pool of blood, until the last moment. I didn't even have the chance to express my love to him. When I opened my eyes again, my heart ached sharply. I curled up my body and gasped for breath. "Alyssa, what's wrong with you?" A gentle voice rang in my ear. In that instant, a chill ran through my body. It was my childhood friend, Marsh. He was also the mastermind who had designed to kidnap me, used me, and threatened Kenneth. He was looking at me with a worried expression on his face. As soon as I met his hypocritical face, the image of Kenneth being tortured until he was covered in blood uncontrollably emerged in my mind. I didn't expect that I had actually gone back 5 years in time. I was back in the year when Kenneth forced me to marry him. I was stunned for a moment. Marsh leaned over, his eyes full of tenderness. "Since you're not happy, come to my place tonight. Let me take care of you." "Okay." He reached out to wipe the tears from my face. Subconsciously, I slapped him hard. Under his surprised gaze, I absent-mindedly perfunctorily said, "Oh, I thought there was a mosquito on your face." Before he could be confused, I turned around and left. I had to find Kenneth. I had to tell him that I loved him. In my previous life, Kenneth and I were a couple known for our pure hatred in our social circle. When we were young, I had already formed a feud with him. At that time, he was a poor student relying on sponsorship, but he outshone me in everything. I was resentful in my heart, but seeing that he had a good appearance and a cold and arrogant personality, I wanted to chase him just for fun. However, I was repeatedly frustrated. That wasn't all. What's more, the fact that he spread the news of my confession being rejected made me the laughingstock known to everyone. I became the clown in everyone's mouth who was being toyed with by him. Everyone was laughing at me. I was arrogant, extreme, vengeful, and extremely concerned about my face. That night, I found someone to kidnap him. I originally wanted to teach him a lesson, but I accidentally discovered his secret of being a succubus. Using this as leverage, I played with him in various ways. I didn't let him go until I went abroad to study. Later, the company went bankrupt, and my father was forced to jump off a building, burdened with a huge debt. I was forced to live on the streets. When I reunited with Kenneth, he had already become a big shot in the circle, and I was imprisoned and retaliated against by him, becoming a tool to satisfy his desires. Under my repeated resistance, he even forced me to marry him without letting me go. In front of others, we fought fiercely, and behind the scenes, we wanted to kill each other in bed. At that time, I thought he only hated me and had nothing but endless revenge. Later, I even believed Marsh's words. I was convinced that Kenneth was the mastermind behind my family's bankruptcy. He was the one who forced my father to death. The little bit of love hidden in my heart was consumed by hatred. I made a deal with the devil and ultimately hurt both others and myself. It was not until the moment Kenneth died that I came to my senses. In despair, I died for love in the explosion. Fortunately, everything is still in time now. I rushed into the car like crazy. Just as I was about to start the car, suddenly, a hot and dry hand grabbed my neck. A hoarse voice scraped heavily past my ear. It made my heart tremble. "Wife, did you have a good time playing with your little lover tonight?" Just hearing his voice, the tears that I had finally held back rolled down again. My voice was hoarse, and I sobbed uncontrollably. "Kenneth." The fingers rubbing against my neck suddenly tightened, and his voice was cold and silent, crying so sadly. "Do you really miss Marsh that much?" In my previous life, in order to force Kenneth to divorce me, I deliberately got close to Marsh. As a result, outsiders thought that Marsh and I were in love with each other, but Kenneth had stolen me away. Thinking of this, I quickly clarified, "I don't like Marsh at all." "Really?" The voice behind me was icy cold. "You just sent me the intimate photos of you two. Have you forgotten so soon?" I was suddenly stunned. In my previous life, in order to disgust him, I sent him many photos of Marsh and me. In my silence, Kenneth sneered. I turned around in a panic and looked. Kenneth was hidden in the darkness, his expression gloomy. His pale face made him look a bit weak and in a sorry state. The panic of losing him in my previous life gripped my heart again. I looked at him eagerly, and tears silently rolled down. "Kenneth, what's wrong with you? Are you not feeling well?" "I don't want you to die." Kenneth's gloomy expression froze for a moment, but soon he smiled self-deprecatingly. "Don't you know best why I'm not feeling well? But you'll be disappointed. I won't die just from missing one meal." His fingertips scraped heavily across my wet eyes. The hot and suppressed breath made me tremble. The familiar and alluring smell rushed around in the small space. I suddenly raised my head. So tonight was Kenneth's heat period. So it was back to this day. Sorry. My heart ached. I reached out to hug him, but he grabbed my wrist. Kenneth's mouth was tightly closed, but his eyes were extremely hot. "What? Do you want to slap me again?" "No." I cried and shook my head frantically. Kenneth, who was looking weak, grew a pair of succubus horns on his head under the torture of hunger. His skin became even paler, and his cold eyes added a touch of alluring charm. I don't know when a small tail emerged, tightly wrapping around my waist. It was stirring restlessly. I gently stroked the succubus tail around my waist. I took the initiative to move closer and kissed Kenneth's chin. I summoned up my courage and said, "I want to satisfy you." The tip of the tail suddenly tightened around me, and even a faint current flashed. Kenneth's gaze on my face was so heavy that it was terrifying. The moment Marsh smashed his bare hand against the car window, Kenneth forced a bleak smile, his expression dull. "Tell me, How are you going to play with me this time? I had no way to defend myself. After all, in my previous life, in order to torture him, I deliberately went out to fool around when he needed me during his heat period, and came back with a mess of smells to make him go crazy. I even deliberately avoided him in order to make him weaker and see him in a sorry state begging me. It was normal for him not to believe me, but at least now I could make him feel better. I held Kenneth's face and kissed him. He shuddered all over. The next moment, I started the car and left Marsh far behind outside the car. I didn't want to be interrupted by anyone for what was going to happen next. Kenneth was stunned for a moment. He touched his lips in disbelief. After a while, he sneered bitterly. Is there something wrong with Marsh's company again? Do you have to beg me like this? My heart felt blocked when I heard this. There was a red light. I stopped the car steadily. I grabbed his collar and kissed him back. This time I was fierce, and my teeth gnawed at his lips. Kenneth's eyes suddenly widened. After a moment, he blinked, and his eyes were filled with complex emotions. The car started again. With a turn of the steering wheel, it deviated from the route back home. Finally, the car stopped in a remote small forest. I unbuckled my seatbelt and got out of the car. When I opened the rear car door, a trace of surprise flashed in Kenneth's eyes, which were full of desolation. He half lifted his eyelids, looking as if he didn't care at all. But those eyes were fixed on me, not willing to move even a bit. Why don't you leave? He actually thought I would just leave him behind. I didn't want to rush things, but his current situation was really not optimistic. I closed the car door and directly sat on his lap. I lowered my eyes and looked at the tail that actively wrapped around me. He was so stubborn with his mouth, but here he was quite honest. I pressed on his tight and uneven suit pants, and the corners of my eyes lifted slightly. Kenneth, in your current state, can you wait until we get home? Kenneth dodged my gaze, turned his face away, but his breathing became heavier. I turned his chin and looked directly into the desire in his eyes. Take off your clothes. Do I have to tell you again? He was stunned for a moment, and the anger in his eyes gradually dissipated. The way he looked at me also gradually became hotter. I found that he seemed to be more at ease when I was tough on him. Indeed, after I married him in my previous life, I never showed him a good face for a single day. Between us, there was nothing but hatred, and we only did things out of hatred. When I kissed Kenneth's succubus horns, he grabbed my hand in a panic. Don't. It's ugly. I directly bit his mouth, and then looking into his eyes, I said softly, it's very beautiful. I not only want to kiss it, but also your tail. The tail wrapped around my ankle was restless. The moment I kissed it, Kenneth's whole face turned bright red. There was even a trace of moisture in his eyes. It was really satisfying to see. The moment I hugged Kenneth, Marsh's phone call came in. What a spoilsport. I was going to hang up directly, but Kenneth snatched the phone. What? Is it inconvenient with me here? He sneered and glanced at me, then handed the phone back. There's nothing inconvenient. There's nothing between me and him. I quickly answered the phone to prove it to him. Marsh's anxious voice came through. Alyssa, where are you? Is Kenneth forcing you again? Thinking of his betrayal and use in my previous life, my tone was extremely impatient. He's not forcing me. I'm fine, he said gently. Then I'm relieved. By the way, when are you coming to see me? Didn't you say you were going to accompany me tonight? When did I promise to accompany him tonight? Before I could speak, the next moment, the phone was directly thrown out. The suppressed anger in Kenneth's eyes was suddenly ignited. He grabbed my hand and pressed me under him. Sure enough, you were in such a hurry to appease me so that you could go to accompany him. I said in a hurry. No. His strong arm wrapped around my waist, imprisoning me tightly in his hot embrace. Kenneth's voice was hoarse. So you really planned to go with Marsh tonight, right? I didn't. No matter how I clarified. He didn't believe me. Kenneth bit my shoulder and gnawed at it painfully. Is this the price of your kindness to me? My heart ached with bitterness. I was just about to explain when he covered my mouth, afraid of hearing my usual sarcasm and mockery. He bit my lips and said with red eyes, Alyssa, you brought this upon yourself. In the narrow car. Kenneth physically taught me a lesson. Aren't you in a hurry to see him? You have to put in some effort. Don't you? Once Kenneth became extreme. Just like me. He was a madman. In the past, I would only confront him head-on. I would rather suffer a great loss myself to deal a heavy blow to the enemy. This time, I took the initiative to yield. I desperately shrank into his arms and whispered, It hurts. Sure enough, Kenneth stopped. He relaxed his restraint on me and asked in a panic and urgency, Where does it hurt? I grabbed his tense forearm and pleaded in a low voice, I want to hug you. Can you let me turn around and hug you? After a moment of silence, Kenneth still turned me around. In the dark, the way he looked at me had a bit more desolation, loneliness, and helplessness that he didn't have time to hide, and also a gentle caution. Every time in the past, he and I were in the dark basement, I had thought that he disliked the hateful look in my eyes. He was worried that our ugly states of sinking would be seen by each other. It turned out that he was afraid that I would see his loss, understand his longing, and see through his delusions. I hugged him and soothed him patiently. I kissed the sweat from his forehead. I buried my head in the crook of his neck. I choked up, and my arms tightened inch by inch, pressing closely against his body. Kenneth, let's calm down and have a good talk. Okay. He was silent for a long time, as if he had completely surrendered. He let out a bitter laugh as if accepting his fate. Stop crying. Go to him. I moved a bit to confirm our close connection. I was so angry that I wanted to cover his mouth. Sure. Anyway, you're generous and willing to let me go to accompany others. I struggled to get up from him and provoked him by scraping his Adam's apple. Anyway, you don't care. And you won't be jealous if I kiss someone else, right? Kenneth's hand on my waist suddenly tightened. He pressed me back down directly. Before I could finish my sentence, he roughly covered my mouth and gnawed at it as if venting his anger. In the hot breath, 2 words gritted out between his teeth. Dream on. This trick really worked. He talked less and put more effort into what he was doing. It's just that I was a bit exhausted. After all, the space was too small, and I couldn't move freely. I was always competitive and unwilling to be at his mercy in such matters. After feeding, Kenneth was full of energy, and those succubus horns retracted. I felt a bit regretful. After all, Kenneth with succubus horns and a serious expression gave me a sense of taboo as if I was desecrating a divine being. I pushed aside the stray hairs sticking to my face, calmed my breathing, and kicked Kenneth, who was pulling me towards him. I didn't manage to kick him away. Instead, Kenneth grabbed my ankle and pressed down on me. I became angry out of embarrassment and slapped him. Bastard. Kenneth frowned and offered his face, but his actions were still overbearing and irresistible. I think I've been trained by Kenneth over the years. Even after all that, I still had the strength to kick and scold him. Kenneth left a kiss on my lips, his voice lingering. Take a rest for a while. I'll drive. We can continue when we get home. In the past, it was usually me who couldn't stand him first. But tonight, I was uncharacteristically clingy. I seduced Kenneth, who always had his limits, to the point of being a bit unrestrained. When it finally ended, As soon as Kenneth stepped out of the bed with one foot, I grabbed his wrist. My misty eyes were full of pleading. "Don't leave me." The wrist that I grabbed froze for a moment, and he looked at me in disbelief. After Kenneth and I were done in my previous life, we would always end up in an unpleasant situation and never slept together. To avoid unnecessary arguments, he would always leave on his own initiative every time. I slowly moved over, with red eyes, and buried my head in his broad chest, hugging him tightly and refusing to let go. I verified his body temperature over and over again. Kenneth closed his eyes, resignedly adjusted his sitting position, allowing me to lie in his arms more comfortably. "It hurts." "Rub my legs for me." With a sweep of his big hand, Kenneth picked me up in a princess carry and held me in his arms. He lowered his eyes and began to knead my legs without complaint. The muscles that had been tense for half the night finally relaxed. "My thighs are sore too." I looked up at him, and he seemed a bit embarrassed at this moment. He avoided my gaze, and his eyelashes fluttered slightly. The usually overbearing Kenneth seemed to have returned to the time when I maliciously teased him in our youth. He was at a loss but obediently did as I said. The first time I had someone kidnap him, I just wanted to give him a good beating, to teach him a lesson and also to let those who were laughing at me know the consequences of offending me. But Kenneth was like a block of wood. Even when I slapped him and humiliated him, he didn't change his expression. I just didn't expect that night happened to be his heat period. It was his first heat period as a succubus after reaching adulthood. It came on strong. I was amazed at the tail and succubus horns that emerged on him. His always cold face turned an alluring shade of red. Those eyes that always kept me at a distance actually showed an inappropriate greed for me. The more he tried to hide it, the more obvious it became. How ridiculous. It turned out that even the cold and indifferent Kenneth could have such a lustful expression on his face. In an instant, I had a different idea. I wanted to humiliate him severely. I wanted to see his humiliated yet longing expression. Didn't he look down on me? I just wanted him to beg me. So I slapped him and kicked him. When he was angry, I suddenly kissed him while tugging at the tip of his tail. When he was at a loss in the face of his sexual desire, I deliberately coaxed him in a low voice. After I messed him up, I watched indifferently. That night was the most embarrassing night in Kenneth's life. The next day, he actually acted as if nothing had happened and expressionlessly asked me to forget everything that had happened the previous night. How could I bear to? So I used his identity to blackmail him. I forced him to be my secret stress-relieving toy. At that time, being young and frivolous, I just thought of it as a lesson for him for the face I had lost. When I came to my senses, our relationship had become twisted. "What are you thinking about?" The fingertips pressing on my thighs suddenly increased their strength. Kenneth's lazy voice turned gloomy again. "It's too late for you to go looking for Marsh now even if you want to." Me? Why is Marsh brought up again? Since I was a child, when had I ever given Marsh a second glance? If I liked Marsh, we would have been together long ago because of our childhood friendship. If I hadn't been forced to marry Kenneth and wanted to vent my anger, I wouldn't have deliberately gotten close to Marsh. Of course, there was another reason. After my family went bankrupt, all my former friends avoided me, but Marsh didn't. But why does Kenneth think that I'm so deeply in love with Marsh? Am I that kind of person? Seeing me remain silent, Kenneth lowered his eyes and sneered. "Get some rest." He turned to leave, and in a hurry, I grabbed something I shouldn't have. Kenneth, who had a cold face just a second ago, suddenly blushed deeply. With a hint of shame, he gritted his teeth. "Let go." "No," I said stubbornly. "Alyssa." I leaned over and hugged him, deliberately saying in a pitiful voice, "Kenneth, I like you. Will you sleep with me?" I swear I won't go to see Marsh again. After a moment of stalemate, Kenneth awkwardly lay back in the quilt. His tone was stiff, and his expression was also unnatural. Go to sleep. I held onto his arm tightly. I want to sleep while hugging you. Kenneth didn't move. I turned his chin and stared into his eyes. Blinking pitifully, Kenneth averted his gaze, and his fingers curled up. After a while, he turned around, wrapped his arm around my waist, and trapped me in his arms. In my sleep, I still wasn't at ease, afraid that this was just a dream. When I woke up in the morning, I looked at the empty space beside me in the quilt and panicked immediately. With my messy hair, I rushed out like crazy. Kenneth, I shouted again and again, hoarsely. I couldn't find Kenneth upstairs or downstairs. Just as I was about to run out, Kenneth rushed out of the study. He looked worried. What's wrong? With tears in my eyes, I rushed over and hugged him. I thought all of this was a dream. Fortunately, you're still here. Kenneth hadn't reacted yet. He just patted my back and asked in a low voice, "Did you have a nightmare?" I sobbed and hugged him tightly. I didn't know how to tell him about being reborn. It was too absurd, and he probably wouldn't believe it. I should break the ice between us first. After all, there were still 5 years, and everything was still in time. Yeah, I dreamed that you left, and I was really scared. Kenneth's hand paused, and he gave a bitter laugh. Don't try to make me happy. I'm not. I held his face in my hands and said seriously, I really want to get along well with you. I like you. Just. Kenneth was afraid of hearing what I was going to say next and interrupted me. When he looked down and saw me standing barefoot on the floor, he immediately frowned and picked me up. Why didn't you even put on your shoes? I was in such a hurry that I forgot. He carried me to the sofa and turned around to get me a pair of slippers. I looked at Kenneth's back, with all sorts of thoughts stuck in my heart. Forget it. There's no need to rush. Take it slow. I will give him enough trust and a sense of security. I started to find a topic. You didn't go to the company. Kenneth avoided answering and just kneaded my calf and asked, Are you feeling unwell anywhere? I leaned over and stared into his eyes. So you stayed at home with me because you were worried about me. Kenneth paused and said expressionlessly, You're thinking too much. He was being duplicitous. I picked up the pillow beside me and threw myself onto the sofa, pretending to be heartbroken. You can go. Don't worry about me. Anyway, you don't care about me at all. Just let me suffer to death alone. I covered my stomach and curled up. Kenneth immediately became anxious. Where does it hurt? I'll call the doctor. With red eyes, I retorted, Weren't you not worried about me? He was at a loss for words for a moment. I wouldn't let it go. Tell me, are you worried about me? Kenneth avoided my gaze and gave a soft, sound. I held his face and kissed him. Kenneth, you're so nice. Kenneth was stunned for a moment, and a faint blush spread across his face. He found an excuse and walked aside with an awkward gait to calm down. When we had lunch together, he started nagging about me running around barefoot again. Just call me next time you need me, I said mournfully. I don't know who was jealous last night and threw my phone away. Kenneth was taken aback. I'll compensate you. In the afternoon, Kenneth went to the company. After I got a new phone and inserted the SIM card, countless missed calls and messages popped up. They were all from Marsh. I ignored them, got ready, and went to the company to find Kenneth with a bunch of flowers in my arms. I didn't want to leave him for a moment. I originally wanted to give Kenneth a surprise. As a result, I couldn't even enter the company gate. After calling Kenneth, his assistant came down to pick me up. However, His assistant's expression wasn't right, and he seemed to have something to say but held back. Even the employees in his company looked at me strangely. They looked at me with pity on their faces, as if they were feeling sorry for me. "What's wrong?" The assistant stammered. "Miss Lynn will know when she goes in." As soon as I walked into Kenneth's office holding the flowers, Marcia's voice came over. "Alyssa, are you okay?" I looked up, and he walked towards me with an excited expression. "It's good that you're okay. I called you so many times. Why didn't you answer?" I looked at Kenneth, who had a gloomy expression, and several police officers in a daze. What was going on? I avoided Marcia's hand that was reaching out to hold mine, clumsily turned around with the flowers in my arms, and walked towards Kenneth. "What's going on here?" Just as Kenneth was about to speak, Marcia asked eagerly, "Alyssa, are you being threatened by him?" "I've already called the police." "Don't worry. If Kenneth dares to restrict your personal freedom again, I'll sue him for you." So Marsh couldn't get in touch with me last night, and he came to Kenneth's company with the police to cause trouble. Just thinking about the way the employees outside looked at me, I took a deep breath in frustration. In my previous life, my relationship with Kenneth was very strained, and I wouldn't come to his company. So even if Marsh caused trouble in his company and maliciously smeared him, with Kenneth's temper, he wouldn't let me know. So how many grievances had he suffered that I didn't know about in my previous life? I pushed the flowers into Kenneth's arms. I walked towards Marsh and raised my hand to slap him in public. Marsh covered his face and looked at me blankly. His voice was low, and his expression was disappointed. "You hit me for him. Doesn't the friendship we've had since we were children mean less than an outsider like him? Apologize." I raised my voice. "Also, he's not an outsider. He and I are husband and wife." Marsh looked at me heartbroken, and with a pale face. He smiled. "You've been bewitched by him. You'll regret it." After saying that, he left with a disappointed expression. If I hadn't already known the truth, I might have been deceived by his affectionate appearance. After the commotion, we saw the police officers off. Kenneth placed the flowers in the most prominent position on his desk. He came over and took my hand and asked, "Does your hand hurt?" I shook my head. "No." "So you came here specifically to see me?" "Of course. Are the flowers for me too?" Yeah, I said with deep affection. Kenneth's greedy gaze gradually became obsessive. He rubbed my palm, his voice hoarse. "You'd better not be lying to me. Otherwise what?" I looked up at him. Kenneth refused to say anything. He continued with his work and told me to do as I pleased. He was so unrestrained last night, but now he was pretending to be proper. I held my face and stared at him. Forever. He wasn't affected. I directly walked over, leaned against his desk, and blatantly rubbed his leg with my foot. I moved it all the way up to his thigh and stepped on it. Kenneth moved the chair back and looked up at me, his gaze restrained. "You don't need to test me. I promise that I won't touch you when it's not my heat period. So you really don't have to come back in the middle of the night every day just to avoid me." I put my hand on the back of his chair, turned it, and sat on his lap. I squinted and smiled. "You'd better keep your word." I lowered my eyes, looked at his slightly dry lips, and slowly moved closer. The fingers Kenneth had placed on the back of the chair tensed up, just as he was about to close his eyes. I chuckled and blew a breath on his eyes. Kenneth realized that I was teasing him and tried to push me away, looking a bit embarrassed. But I grabbed his tie and kissed him heavily. Kenneth let out a hurried gasp. What about not wanting it? He was being so proactive. I looked at his confused and embarrassed state and tore open his shirt. "Do you want it?" Kenneth stared at me for a moment, then closed his eyes as if self-loathing. And his Adam's apple bobbed. Yes. I stood up pretending to be regretful, tapped his lips and said, "What a pity. You promised not to touch me, and I don't want you to break your promise." The next moment, I was pressed back onto the desk by Kenneth. But soon, I kicked him and started scolding. "Beast." Kenneth's crazy side came out again. "Aren't you the one who asked for this? I'm like a beast because of you." The next time I received a call from Marsh. It was from the hospital. He had been in a car accident. "Alyssa, can you come and see me? I'm feeling really bad right now." Marsh's voice sounded tired, and his pleading tone made it hard to refuse. I looked at Kenneth, who was peeling fruit for me. His face immediately turned cold. "You can go. I don't know if he's dying. It's not impossible to see him for the last time." I almost burst out laughing. Kenneth stuffed a piece of wax apple into my mouth. I chewed and earnestly suggested, "If you're feeling bad, you should call a doctor." Marsh's voice sounded even more painful. "Alyssa, don't treat me like this. I was wrong. I shouldn't have made Kenneth lose face in public. I was just so worried about you that I acted impulsively, but I don't regret it, even though I'm being retaliated against like this now." I looked at Kenneth. Kenneth twitched the corner of his mouth. I didn't do anything to him. Suddenly, a huge noise came from the other end of the phone, along with Marsh's cry of pain as he fell out of bed. "Mr. Marsh, are you okay? You're not in a condition to get out of bed right now. You need to stay in bed and rest. Do you still want your leg?" The nurse's shrill voice rang out. After the commotion, Marsh's weak voice came through again. "Alyssa, I'm okay. Can I come to see you?" I suppressed my annoyance and said, "Just lie there and don't move. I'll come to see you." I wasn't afraid of anything else. I was afraid that he would exaggerate the situation and smear Kenneth again. No wonder Kenneth had such a bad reputation in the outside world in my previous life. I hung up the phone and reached for Kenneth's hand. He let me hold his hand, but he didn't move, and there was a bitter smile on his face as if he had expected it. But soon he turned back into that expressionless and indifferent look. It turned out that the slightest change was enough to make Kenneth worry about losing me. In my previous life, I didn't even realize that he loved me this much. I just thought that he forced me to stay by his side for revenge. I pinched his arm hard. "What are you spacing out for? Come with me. Or do you want me to go and see him alone in the middle of the night?" Kenneth's originally dull eyes lit up again. Kenneth accompanied me to the door of the ward and suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?" Kenneth held my hand tightly, his gaze gentle. "I trust you. I'll just wait for you outside." "Okay. Then you stay here and wait for me obediently." I stood on tiptoe and left a kiss on his face, then turned and walked into the ward. Marsh's naturally amorous eyes looked at me. His voice was hoarse and trembling. "I thought you were lying to me. I knew you still cared about me." I looked at Marsh calmly. "Did Kenneth really cause your car accident?" Marsh was hit hard. His eyes were red, and he seemed on the verge of collapse. "You don't believe me? I'm the one with a broken leg lying in the hospital now. Do I really have to frame him at the risk of my own safety?" He gave a miserable laugh. "Did Kenneth say something to you? You're completely bewitched by Kenneth now. Alyssa, you're too naive. You haven't seen his true nature when he's a beast in human clothing." I never realized before that Marsh was so good at acting. He made the false things sound so real. "How did he treat you in the year since you came back? Have you forgotten all about it? He imprisoned you, tortured you, and forced you to marry him using your debt. Don't you hate him at all anymore?" At first, when Kenneth locked me up at home, I really hated him to the core. I thought this was his revenge on me, now that I've been reborn. Thinking about the threats and intimidation from the debt collectors at that time, when I was cornered, Kenneth took me away and locked me up at home. There was indeed an element of revenge. But at the same time, he was also protecting me. Unfortunately, at that time, I was immersed in the pain of my father's death and only resented him. I even threatened him with my life, making us resent each other. It's just that our relationship was twisted from the very beginning. As a result, one wrong step led to another, and the misunderstanding between us became deeper and deeper, and neither of us was willing to believe that the other actually loved ourselves. Seeing me in a daze, Marsh thought I was wavering. He sighed, unable to hide his disappointment. Alyssa, I don't care if you don't believe me about this, but I have something to tell you. Something about Uncle Lin. I don't want you to be deceived by that villain Kenneth. He took out a stack of documents and handed them to me, saying word by word, "He's the one who killed Uncle Lin." I looked at Marsh in surprise. This thing actually happened earlier. In my previous life, Marsh came to me with these documents a year later. At that time, my relationship with Kenneth was very strained. After seeing this evidence, I was convinced that everything Kenneth did was to revenge and torture me. Because of my father's death, I hated him deeply and also hated myself. That's why I lost my mind and stepped into Marsh's trap. You don't believe it? Marsh's eyes stared at me deeply. It was as if he was testing something. I suppressed the panic in my heart and played along with him. I gritted my teeth and said, "If Kenneth did this, I won't let him get away with it." Before I left, Marsh opened his arms and looked at me. "Alyssa, before you go, can you give me a hug?" I paused for a moment and just perfunctorily said, "You take a good rest." Marsh suddenly called out to me, "I have something else to give you. It's Uncle's keepsake. You were abroad at that time, so I've been keeping it. I was afraid you'd be sad, so I didn't give it to you. Now it's time to return it to its rightful owner." As soon as I heard it was something left by my father, I walked over anxiously. What did my dad leave behind? Marsh handed me a box. As soon as I opened it, I suddenly felt a prick in my neck. Before losing consciousness, I saw a sick smile on Marsh's lips. When I opened my eyes again, I was on a private plane. Marsh gently stroked my cheek and showed a gentle and charming smile. "Alyssa, you're awake." His smile scared me into a cold sweat, and I moved aside. "Marsh, what do you want to do?" Marsh said innocently. "I just want to rescue you from that pervert Kenneth. Isn't that your biggest wish?" As he spoke, his tone changed, and his voice turned cold. "Alyssa, don't tell me you like him." I looked at this unfamiliar Marsh in front of me, and a terrifying thought came to my mind. This didn't happen in my previous life at all. Unless... I stared at Marsh warily, and the scenes that happened not long ago flashed through my mind. Marsh looked at my terrified expression and laughed softly. "The car accident didn't kill me, but it made me have a dream. In the dream, you actually wanted to die for that bastard Kenneth." Marsh looked at me, his face full of resentment and unwillingness. "In my previous life, I threatened him with your life to help you. Didn't you want to get rid of him? What did I do wrong? Why did you abandon me for that thing that's neither human nor ghost in the end? Why?" Marsh suddenly grabbed my neck, dragged me over, and leaned in to stare into my eyes. "Alyssa, haven't I been good to you all these years? Why do you always turn a blind eye to me? Let go." I broke free from his grip and hurriedly backed away. Marsh was stunned for a moment, then grabbed my wrist. "You're afraid of me. When have I ever hurt you? I almost had you in my previous life. Why did you have to die for him? This time, I won't let you leave me again." He lost control and was about to kiss me while pinching my face. In the struggle, I slapped him hard. "In your dreams." My chest heaved violently. and I stared at Marsh with full alertness. He was slapped to the side of his head, and he laughed with a gloomy expression. What? Do you still want to go back to Kenneth? He probably hates you to the core now. The divorce agreement you signed should have been delivered to him by now. What do you think his expression will be like if he knows that you deliberately deceived him and then ran away with me? Thinking of the expression on Kenneth's face when he smiled and said he believed me, my heart ached and swelled with pain in an instant. I couldn't bear to think about how Kenneth would feel when he saw that divorce agreement. I rushed up and grabbed his collar. Shut up. The smile on Marsh's face grew wider. He's just a bastard. He doesn't deserve your love in this lifetime. He'll never know that you love him. He'll just hate you for abandoning him. Even if you stand in front of him, he won't believe you. This time, I just want you to stay by my side forever. Marsh lowered his eyes, rubbed his fingertips against my lips, and said word by word, if you don't want Kenneth to go down the same path as in the previous life, be a good girl and listen to me. Otherwise, I don't mind threatening him with you again. You don't want him to die, do you? I slumped down on the ground. Marsh knew exactly that I loved Kenneth more than my own life, and I wouldn't dare to let him take risks again. After a long silence, I said wearily, where are you taking me? Marsh's next words completely shattered my hopes. Of course. We're going to a place where it's just the two of us. Kenneth probably never dreamed that I would leave everything behind and take you abroad. I closed my eyes in despair. In this life, as long as Kenneth can live well, I'll be content. I slept in a daze. As soon as I opened my eyes, I met a dark and sticky gaze. I closed my eyes and didn't look at him. I was conserving my strength. Until I got off the plane, I could still feel that disgusting gaze. I didn't expect that if I didn't make a fuss, Marsh would be unhappy instead. I was wrapped up tightly by Marsh and stuffed into a car, on a desolate street, in a strange town. I looked at the scenery outside the window, trying hard to figure out where I was. Suddenly, a car sped by. In a trance, I saw Kenneth's face through the car window. My heart tightened suddenly. Marsh suddenly leaned in and looked in the direction I was looking. Alyssa, what are you looking at? I suppressed the excitement in my heart and closed my eyes without saying a word. Marsh stroked my cheek and said obsessively, in your previous life, you fell in love with Kenneth even though he imprisoned and forced you. You can fall in love with me too, right? The car drove for more than 2 hours and finally stopped in front of a small courtyard with a Nordic style. As soon as I got out of the car, I kicked Marsh hard. Marsh was still a lame man with limited mobility. By the time his bodyguards reacted, I had already run some distance away.
The document contained evidence that Kenneth had secretly manipulated things and framed my father's company. No wonder Kenneth had indulged me these days but never took the initiative to get close to me. It always seemed like there was something between us. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get close to him. So he didn't misunderstand that I was pretending to make up with him, but actually wanted to take the opportunity to retaliate against him. Did he? I picked up the document and went to find Kenneth. I turned around and bumped right into Kenneth, who had just finished a video conference. When he saw the thing in my hand, his brows furrowed deeply, and he looked at me anxiously. I didn't do it. I was just about to say that I knew. Kenneth quickly explained. I did take over the project mentioned here, but all the procedures were legitimate. I have never used illegal means to frame anyone, including your father. I will have someone investigate this clearly and give you an explanation. As he spoke, he looked at me with pain. If you don't believe me, I immediately rushed up and hugged him, interrupting his words. I know it wasn't you. Of course I believe you. I'm not leaving you because of this document either. Don't believe what Marsh said. I was coerced by him. I looked at Kenneth and told him everything that had happened to me, including the fact that both Marsh and I had been reborn once. Looking at Kenneth's furrowed brows, I felt a bit frustrated. You don't believe me at all, do you? I should have expected it. I believe everything you said. Kenneth held my hand tightly. In his eyes, besides shock, there was only heartache. I just didn't expect that you would die for love because of me in the end. How could you? He still didn't have the courage to ask the last sentence. I leaned in, hugged him, kissed him, and boldly confessed my love to him. Because I love you, Kenneth. I love you. Kenneth trembled as he accepted my kiss. He pressed me into his arms little by little and held me tightly. He bit me and rubbed against me, his voice fierce. Even if you regret it in the future, I will never let you go in this lifetime. But he held me so carefully, with restraint and forbearance. Just as I pushed him down on the sofa and was about to tear his clothes, Kenneth suddenly grabbed my hand. He lay on the sofa, looking at me with a gaze full of desire but also restraint. Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. Oh, I'm quite obedient. After a half-second pause, I said, then can I just play with you? Kenneth's eyes darkened. I pressed my advantage. Honey, please. All of Kenneth's rationality vanished with my word. Honey, after I was busy for a while. He wanted to punish me afterwards. I sensibly hugged him. I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him. I called him in a hoarse voice. Kenneth. The next second, I was pressed on his lap, and there was a slap sound as he hit my buttocks. My face turned red instantly. He really meant to punish me. Kenneth's tail wrapped around my waist, and a faint current flashed at the tip of the tail. I angrily bit my lip tightly. After taking a shower, I snuggled with Kenneth. I started to tell him about the things that happened in my previous life. When I talked about how Marsh had kidnapped me and threatened him, I suddenly thought of something. I don't think Marsh could have obtained such detailed and specific information, even if he faked it. He didn't have the ability. There must be someone else behind him. As soon as I thought of this, everything made sense. I looked at Kenneth eagerly and asked, have you offended anyone? Are they your business competitors? Think quickly. Kenneth was silent for a while, looking embarrassed. Ahem. There are quite a few. I immediately jumped out of bed and brought the computer over, looking ready to stay up all night. Okay. You list them one by one first, and we'll rule them out one by one. Kenneth just smiled and looked at me. Why aren't you in a hurry at all? He closed the computer, took it away, and put it aside. He kissed my fingers and said lazily, don't worry. The fish has already taken the bait. Leave this matter to me. There's no need to rush. I was surprised and said, you already knew. A few days ago, I found out that Marsh had contact with them. I just set a little hook to test them, and they couldn't wait to take the bait on their own initiative. Kenneth lowered his eyes and sneered disdainfully. They're just a few pests. They're not worth your trouble. Seeing that I was about to ask further, Kenneth rubbed the place where I had just been spanked and kissed my neck. Soon I was so kissed by him that I couldn't think of anything else. After taking another shower in the bathroom, Kenneth held me and was drowsy. I had no sleepiness. I propped up my head and poked him, thinking that he always misunderstood that I liked Marsh. I simply took the opportunity to make it clear once and for all. Kenneth, why did you think I liked Marsh? Just because of those few crappy photos of me and him. Can't you tell that I was deliberately trying to disgust you? Kenneth clenched the fingers that were poking around. Maybe it's because I care too much. So I'm always scared. When you were chasing me back then, he warned me to stay away from you, saying that I was just a tool for you to make him angry. I guess it wasn't just a warning. At that time, Kenneth was just a poor student, and Marsh must have said even worse things. The night of my heat last time, wasn't he going to confess his love to you? I thought it was real. I thought you were really going to be with him. What? Kenneth opened his phone and showed me. That night, Marsh had indeed sent him a message, along with photos of the scene arrangement. It could be said to be a blatant provocation, trying to cuckold him. Now that I think about it, even if I had gone that night and refused him, He could have found an excuse to muddle through by saying that he was standing up for me. He did this on purpose to show you. I angrily got up to clarify. I didn't know about this at all. I also didn't know his plans for that night. Even if he had confessed his love to me, I wouldn't have agreed. I have never liked him. Marsh and I had always been good friends. I never expected that one day he would use me. I held Kenneth's face in my hands and said over and over again, Kenneth, the person I like is you. I only like you. Kenneth's chest holding me was burning hot. His eyes darkened as he looked at me, and his voice was hoarse. Baby, do you still want to sleep tonight? I turned over and sat on his waist, persisting. I haven't heard you say it yet. What about you? Do you like me? Kenneth looked at me indulgently, kissed my fingertips, and his voice was low and alluring. I like you. Actually, I liked you the first time I saw you. I just didn't dare to tell you. Alyssa, you are the love of my life.